kids have to feel like adults believe they can do it. Mm-hmm. And they have to feel that the adults enjoy them and enjoy having them there every day.
Welcome to Let's Talk Kids. I'm Mary Coogan, President and CEO of Advocates for Children of New Jersey and the host of Let's Talk Kids, a video podcast with community partners, policymakers, and experts on issues impacting children and youth. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Dr. Christine Johnson, who is the Superintendent of the Hoboken Public Schools. So glad you could join us.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
So I've read that based on a national scale developed by Stanford University researchers, and it's to, I guess, assess student achievement and growth, that the Hoboken Public Schools now rank number 1 in New Jersey in math and reading achievement, which is a significant accomplishment. And I totally applaud you and your colleagues. And I guess today, I hope we can learn how you did it.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things to make really clear is that in that study, we're looking at growth, not overall achievement. So it's really measuring the growth of student achievement over time as opposed to the end game result, which is actually a good thing because then we can kind of talk about not only how we got there, but what else we need to do to continue to raise the bar of achievement for the students in Hoboken.
Thank you for the clarification, but I do think any type of growth is wonderful, especially as people keep talking about the impact of COVID, kids falling behind, et cetera, and the fact that the kids in Hoboken clearly are doing better and better is, I think, significant. So I do applaud you.
Thank you.
So what brought you to the Hoboken Public Schools? Let's start there.
So I was a superintendent for years in the Morris County school systems. I was first in Mendham Township, and then I was the superintendent in Boonton. And I was teaching at the time also as an adjunct professor at Montclair State University. And while I was there, a colleague and a friend of mine said, hey, Hoboken has a position open. Are you interested in applying? And at first I really wasn't. I was in Boonton at the time for about 8 years and kind of really steeped into the work that we were doing there, also student achievement focused. And I said, no, I don't think so. And then after a few nudges, I said, let me give it a try. So I did apply and went through an interview process there. And the more I visited Hoboken and the more I interacted with the Board of Education, the more I realized that it was the type of educational challenge that I really was interested in. I knew that there were achievement gaps. I knew that there was a lot of work that had to be done. But most importantly, one of the things that I gleaned from the interview process was that it was a Board of Education that was kind of struggling at the time with identifying where it really wanted to go and how to get there. And also there were a few superintendent changes in a very short period of time. So I knew that the faculty was kind of craving some consistency. So I said, let me give it a shot. And I'm now going on to my 11th year there.
Wow. So you're up for the challenge.
Yes.
All right. So what did you find there? Talk a little bit about the demographics, the student population, how many schools, how big are they?
So at the time, Hoboken had 5 schools. A middle school and a high school were actually joined together. So it was a junior-senior high school. Okay. Demographics at the middle high school level were probably around 70 to 73% minority children, between 70 and 75% economically disadvantaged. We also had one elementary school in the district, Connors Elementary School, that was a completely segregated elementary school with over 90% economically disadvantaged children and over 90% minority children in the school. And the other 2 elementary schools were kind of racially balanced and mixed.
And what's the total population, like the student population?
About 55% were economically disadvantaged and about the same in terms of racial and ethnic minority breakdown.
But like how many kids total? Are you talking about huge schools? Or?
Oh, no. So we're talking about a population of about 2,700 students, not including pre-K.
This is back what year?
2015-16.
Okay. And were there charter schools in Hoboken?
There were 3 charter schools. So each of them came at a little bit of a different time in history. There was Hoboken Charter, and then there was Elysian Charter and Ola Charter School. So there were all 3. And when I arrived into the district was in the middle of a lawsuit with one of the charter schools in terms of expanded enrollment. The school district filed a lawsuit regarding how the charter schools, in their opinion, had a segregative effect on the overall city's population. Once I got to the district and took the seat, the case was already pending and they were just waiting for judgment.
Okay.
And ultimately, the public school district did not prevail in the case. And the courts found that the city of Hoboken, that if you were going to look at the demographic footprint of the public schools versus the charter schools, the only way to actually do that accurately was not to compare the public school versus the charter schools, but to look at the overall population of the community. And so while at the time there was a pretty grand difference between the demographic footprints of the public school system and the public charters, the courts basically said, but the city of Hoboken is changing and the footprint in the charter schools look similar to that of the overall city.
Interesting.
And so the district did not prevail in the suit.
Interesting. Okay. So talk a little bit about what did the performance level or proficiency level of the students look like in 2015?
Not so great.
Okay.
The performance of the students in the area of English language arts was about 39% proficiency.
Okay.
And in the area of mathematics, it was 31%. I can also tell you that the advanced placement scores at the high school were pretty abysmal. I think only 22% at the time were scoring 3s and higher. There were no AP scholars that were identified. And the number of children that were actually participating in the AP program was on the low side, very low. And all of that has dramatically changed.
So you had a few challenges. Okay, so how did you get from there to where you are today, which is all kinds of accolades for what's been accomplished? What was your approach?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that when I first came in that I realized was that there was a little bit of a lack of trust in terms of leadership and programs and things like that. I think that the faculty was a little concerned with putting all this effort into a new superintendent coming in and wanting different things. And was this person actually going to stay? Because they hadn't in the past. So was I going to actually stay? And so I decided to just start off by letting them, I am not going anywhere. I went through the whole thing. This is a district that I plan to retire from. This is not a stepping stone for me. I'm not a brand new superintendent, so I'm here to stay. And then we focused particularly on things that would change the narrative of the school district. I think sometimes people go into school districts that are having challenges with student achievement and automatically they think we have to test prep. The only way to get test scores up is to test prep. And I looked at it a little differently. I looked at it from the perspective that I saw what our enrollment was. It was low. It was at a historic low point. I thought to myself, before I even jump into the idea of raising student achievement, I need to ensure that the community understands what we're doing. And I wanted to create, with all of my administrative team and the board and the faculty, the most unique, innovative school district that anyone would want their child in. That was the goal. The goal really was not first to say we're going to spend 6 hours prepping for the NJSLA or, whatever the test was called at the time. The goal was, what can we put in programmatically that would make all families in Hoboken want to come to the Hoboken Public Schools? That was really what we tried to do. The second thing was an assessment of rigor in the schools and to make sure that we were not holding kids back, not consciously, but even unconsciously as a result of the systems we had in place. So, for example, we had a gifted and talented program at the time, but not all kids were tested for the gifted and talented program, right? So we had to make that shift. Every child was going to be tested for the gifted and talented program. We had tracked classes, just like the old-fashioned red birds and bluebirds and yellow birds. There were pockets of that all over that just didn't really make sense. So we had to have conversations about how to detrack some of those classrooms. And I'll never forget a 3rd grade class that was coming in the same year that I was there at Wallace Elementary School. The parents had a meeting with me and sat down and said, "You're breaking our kids up." And I said, "Listen, you have to trust that this is the best thing to do." And they stood behind it. They said, "We're going to trust that this is the right thing to do, but we're going to watch every step of the way."
Mm-hmm.
And their kids ended up graduating from the high school, not this year, but last year. And all of the kids in that class, I think only 2 or 3 of them left the district, because that was a phenomenon that always happened in Hoboken, that families would come in, stay for kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, and then by 3rd grade, they would leave. But these parents made a commitment to stay and keep their children in the district all the way through. And it was that 3rd grade class that really reflected the progress in the district. We saw it right from, but a big part of that was making sure that not only certain kids in that grade level got what they needed, but all kids in that grade level were getting what they needed. So we addressed the tracking issue. We eliminated courses at the high school that were what I might consider not collegiately appropriate.
Like, for example?
Like Algebra 1A.
What is Algebra 1A?
Not sure what Algebra 1A is. Algebra is algebra. We offer college prep algebra, and children that would like to pursue trade schools and the workforce still need college level algebra. So we eliminated courses like that. We just really looked systemically at everything. We had an after-school program in 3 of our elementary schools. It was run differently. One of the elementary schools had the School of Ballet from New York City, and another elementary school had crayons and coloring sheets. The whole after-school program was not creating an equalized, enriching opportunity for all kids. So we standardized the after-school program and made it as great as we possibly could for every kid that wanted to participate. Things like that. We even looked at curriculum, and we said, why is our social studies curriculum being delivered with fidelity in one school, but in 2 of the other elementary schools, I don't see any evidence of it at all. So we began to systematize things until we got to a point where we are now in a bit of a period of a gradual release. And honestly, I think the faculty appreciated it because I think they looked at it as a sense of guidance for what was happening. Prior to that, it was a lot of Wild West kind of implementation. So we kind of put everyone on the same page and made sure that the faculty understood that it wasn't at all because we did not trust their professionalism or what they were trying to do as teachers, but it was really to ensure that every child was given the same opportunities, both inside the classroom during the day and after school.
So what's your teacher turnover as you implemented all these changes?
Very low. Very low, yeah.
So to your point, they appreciated some consistency and structure.
Very low. And, we had a year or two where we saw some spikes. And I think everybody sees that. But for the most part, we really have low turnover. We also have a very robust candidate pool at all times. So while I think Hoboken is a place that younger individuals coming out of college are interested in getting to Hoboken, living in Hoboken, starting a career in Hoboken, that helps us for sure. But we really do not have a very challenging time finding candidates. I think part of that is because our teacher contracts are always fantastic. Our Board of Education has evolved into a it is the most functional Board of Ed that I have worked with. It's very committed to their work as advocates for children, and they appreciate the work of their faculty. And so it's reflected in the contract. And our teachers will tell you that they feel that. So that has really helped a lot.
Did that evolve over the course of time, or did you come into a system where that existed?
It evolved. It was beginning to change when I got there, and it has only gotten stronger and stronger over time. Our faculty and our students don't watch conflict among the faculty and the administration, or the administration and the board, or they watch groups of people who work together for the benefit of kids. We don't always agree on everything, but there isn't a grandstanding approach. There isn't a individualized agenda that we are all working on the same page. The arrows are going in the same direction to get to where we need to go. And everybody knows what those arrows are. It's very clear what they are in Hoboken.
Cool. So what types of changes were made to let's start with the reading or language arts, to get that on track where kids have now seen an improvement and a growth in skills?
So we did a few things. The first thing we did was we put in a system called night rights. And it was something that I had been doing in Mendham also, and it was something that I brought over to Boonton as well. Night rights are a system in which every single night kids write, no matter what. They are given a prompt on the basis of something that they either read or do, and they write at night. And that was, for the most part, what their homework was. My philosophy is the better writer you are, the better reader you are, not the other way around. So what we did was we broke night rights up, and we had 2 nights were dedicated to language arts literacy, and the prompt was associated with a core novel that the kids were reading. One night it was more of a expository essay based on what they might be doing in social studies. One night it was a little bit more of a text comparison type of writing prompt based on something science related. And they did that for a good 3 to 4 years before we made any change. It was just writing night after night after night.
And how I mean, talk a little bit. How much did they have to write? Did the teachers then grade it or give criticism, feedback back?
Yeah.
Like
we thought a little bit about, and because I had been doing night writes for a long time, I learned a lot over the years. And one of the things that I learned was a classroom teacher realistically cannot grade how many papers every single night. So we kind of changed the philosophy on it a little. The idea was that kids would develop a sense of automaticity in writing, that they would be able to write on demand, really as a life skill. And so the goal was that kids would get the prompt and they would be writing 3, 4, 5 paragraph essays every night. They would then bring it in the next day. And depending on what the night write was based on, that teacher the following day would utilize the night write as the anticipatory set for the actual next day's lesson. So they did not have to take every essay and grade every essay from every night write, but what they did was they incorporated it into the beginning of their lesson. So it might be something like, everybody take out your night writes from last night. Take out a yellow highlighter. Today, what we're going to do is look at expressive language. Everywhere where you see an example of expressive language in your essay, highlight it in yellow. Then kids would be working on it. And then we would say something, or the teacher would say something like, take a pink highlighter and put a dot everywhere that you think expressive language could improve your essay. And they would. And so it became part of a teaching tool as opposed to just a grade. So we did that. We put in writing benchmarks where the kids 4 times a year would actually take an essay through its entire process, and we would benchmark all of the data on it. I mean, every single essay, we benchmarked the data. We anchored the papers to determine what was considered like a really effective essay to what was the essay that really needed the most help. And we anchored them so that we were able to use them with teachers so that they could learn how to better help give feedback to kids on improving their work.
So let's say class of 15, 20 kids, there's 3 of us, myself included, who are at that lower end, who need that additional help. How does that teacher manage to help me and not hold the rest of the class back?
So actually, that's such a great question, because that then became the big question, right? That became among teachers, wait a second, now what do? We have 4 children that are here, and we have 4 children that need help with this. We have 5 children that don't need any help with this essay. What do we do? So it's interesting because we were in a period of time where we were actually going through a contract negotiation with the teachers. And so one of the things that we put into place in the contract was something called common planning. So we were able to get teachers common planning time every single day together. So in the Hoboken Public School District, if you're a 3rd grade teacher, you have common planning with your 3rd grade colleagues every day during the same period, every single day.
And what is that? What happens during common planning?
It gives teachers the ability to sit and plan appropriately together based on data. So at a common planning meeting, you might see teachers sitting around a table, somewhat like this, with 1 day a week, a principal with them. 4 days a week, we allow them to lead their own common planning. The teachers will sit and they'll say, here are my 4 students that are really struggling with even developing a thesis statement or an introductory paragraph. And another teacher on the grade level says, I'm having that same problem. Together, let's come up with a lesson or a strategy that we can utilize. But then we took it one step further and we realized that, well, that's all great, but kids then need a common time to do that. So before anyone talked about tutoring during the school day or anything, we had embedded something called the ILP period, which is an individualized learning pathway. Every day, every child in the Hoboken Public School District up through 8th grade gets an individualized learning pathway period in which the teachers on the grade level during that same period have the ability to work with all kids on the grade level based on what they've learned in common planning. So during ILP, we utilize a reading specialist, we utilize intervention specialists, classroom teachers plan small group lessons. Our children that qualify for gifted and talented are challenged during that period. We actually originally called it challenge and support. And then we realized this really is more individualized than that. So what happens during that period is everybody gets what they need. So it's kind of a little tutoring, a little challenge, a gifted and talented program. Our ELL students receive ELL services during that period.
ELL for
English language learners during that period. And then what's really interesting is a class of, let's say, 20 children during an ILP period may only have 9 kids left in the classroom. So the teacher has the ability to work with just those 9 kids because the children who need gifted education go during that period. The children who need to work with a reading specialist go during that period. It almost desensitized the labeling of kids because everybody gets what they need during that period.
And how the kids, I assume, responded because they started feeling like they were learning.
Yeah.
How'd the parents respond? Did they feel like some of their children might be getting inappropriately labeled?
Actually, no, it was the opposite. They kind of felt as if the labeling was kind of being removed because, see, in the past, prior to ILP, and in most school districts, a gifted and talented child is pulled out during when? It could be any class. It could be during language arts. It could be during math. And the teacher says, okay, Johnny, Sally, Stephen, it's your time. And the gifted and talented teacher is waiting at the door and they leave. Or a child that needs basic skills instruction. When did they go for basic skills instruction? Well, it could be during math time, but they need math. So this provided the opportunity for every child to get in addition to, and we ensured that no one was being pulled out of core subject areas anymore for anything. And so we've reworked the schedule, added minutes to the school day, and we were able to get ILP in place.
What, if any, were the barriers to trying to make all these changes? Because it sounds like there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of logistics.
Time was a barrier for us, right? Because it was something we tried to explain to everybody. When I say we, I mean myself and my assistant superintendent and the rest of the cabinet and principals and teachers too, was that this was going to take time. And so if we put something in place like the ILP period, it was not going to make a change in 6 months. Mm-hmm. It probably wasn't even going to make a change in a year. It was going to take a little bit of time. So that was something we had to get people to really understand. We hold a lot of meetings with parents. We talk to parents a lot. So we didn't get a lot of pushback on a lot of the things we were doing. We would get things like, oh, I had to hold my kid down last night when they were doing their night rights as a joke because, no kid wants to write every single night. We just recently switched night rights to night reads. We actually, as a result of trying to get a little ahead of the AI curve, we shifted to night reads. And so now while the kids used to read things during class and do the writing prompt at night.
Now they read at night
Yes,
and write.
correct.
Interesting.
Yes. So we've made that shift. But that was a huge thing that we did. Another big initiative was we trained many teachers in multisensory reading. So as you're hearing a lot about the science of reading right now, everybody is kind of talking about New Jersey and other states moving into the direction of the science of reading. We had been there in Hoboken for many years. We were integrating phonics and phonemic awareness and multisensory reading approaches well before people were really talking about it.
So just take a minute to explain what are those different elements.
So it is everything from blend sounds to really understanding how to read, how to deconstruct words, as opposed to context clues on pages.
Which is what has been pushed for a while, I think, right?
It was pushed. We were doing guided reading. We were doing some core novel studies, but we started moving those things more into the realm of really consciously teaching children how to read. We worked with IMSE, which is the Institute for Multisensory Education, and we have over 80 teachers in the district that are fully trained in multisensory reading.
But what does that mean? What is multisensory reading?
It is a series of strategies that allows children to actually break words down to understand how to read and speak them, as opposed to memorizing words.
Okay.
But multisensory reading doesn't ignore the bank of language. So in a multisensory classroom, you still will see word walls. You will see a very rich print environment in a classroom. So in our classrooms, if you walk in, you will see word walls and anchor charts all over the classroom to ensure that there's reinforcement of what the children are reading. But you'll also see kids in our classrooms at the K1-2 level sounding words out by tapping up their arm, using sand trays to feel the letters that they're actually writing. That's all part of multisensory reading. That is the science of reading. So we're deep into that. So in addition to 80 plus teachers being fully trained by the Institute, we took it one step further and we partnered with the Orton Gillingham Institute. And we now have over 70 teachers in the district fully certified as Orton Gillingham reading teachers.
And for those who don't know Orton Gillingham, what is that?
So Orton Gillingham was the original multisensory reading approach. These are not boxed programs. They're not canned curriculum. They are actually strategies for teachers to use to help children read. We think about Orton Gillingham, a lot of people think about it's a strategy to help children with dyslexia read. But in all actuality, it's for all children.
Mm-hmm.
And so we now have over 70 teachers certified as classroom Orton Gillingham educators. We have over 10 teachers that are associate level certificate holders. Those are our reading specialists and some of our special education teachers. We have another cohort going through this year with another 15 teachers. Our goal is, and what we have now, is every grade level at every school has at least one Orton Gillingham certified teacher, so that if any child is struggling with reading beyond kindergarten, there is a classroom that embeds the strategies from 8:15 in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon across all content areas.
So what I'm taking from this, not being a teacher, is that all of your teachers or have learned multiple strategies, and given the fact that every kid is different, the idea is they can actually identify maybe what's causing that child to still struggle
100%.
and then pull from a whole bunch of things.
It's a toolbox.
They just decide, well, I'm going to use this strategy. And if this doesn't work, I'm going to use that strategy. And if that doesn't work, I'll ask my colleague to try something else.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a variety. Now, I'm thinking that type of training, can every school district do that, or is that really expensive? And so
it is very expensive.
Okay.
So we are fortunate in Hoboken. When I first got to the district in 2015, I met right away with a group of parents who are really excited about new leadership, just in general. And I helped them form the Hoboken Public Education Foundation. It was something that I had done in Mendham. It was something that I see in other districts where you have a dedicated group of community members, parents in the district that come together and form a foundation. And they make it their kind of life's work to help generate additional funds for the school district.
Okay.
So the Hoboken Public Education Foundation started in 2015-16, and since then has generated hundreds of thousands of dollars. They've done everything from close the gap with one-to-one devices during COVID to covering the cost of much of our training for teachers.
That's really wonderful. So it's maybe a more elaborate PTA, PTO that's maybe not just focused on some sporting event, but really looking at overall academics.
And they're great partners, but they're tough partners too. They're not just going to hand money over. They want to see the data. They want to know if there's evidence. They have funded so many things, including the Orton Gillingham training. They have funded things like National Equity Lab courses at the high school, where our students at the high school are taking dual enrollment, collegiate credit-oriented courses. They fund much of that. They fund SAT courses. They fund the building of new labs. You know, one of the things we talked about when I first got here was like, how do we make the Hoboken Public School District a place where people would want to come, where kids would want to go to school? The Hoboken Public Education Foundation helped us fund an innovation lab. They helped us fund a hydroponics and aquaponics lab. They helped us fund a Hudson River estuary living lab with touch tanks. They helped us fund a business lab with the Bloomberg curriculum.
Wow.
An aviation lab. We have, students that are studying to be pilots. So they've helped fund that. It was a whole community effort, but things that you're talking about, like the Orton Gillingham training, it's expensive. It's a $1,500 endeavor per teacher, per training block. So once they get past that, then they stay in it for a while, and then there's a fee to ensure that their certificate stays intact.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So how, if you did, but I'm assuming there had to be some changes to school climate, right? Because you were saying when you first got there, it was not the hot spot to be. So what things changed there, or how did you change that?
I think we talked to a lot of families. We talked to a lot of kids. We involved our faculty, and we tried to implement things that they wanted. So for kids to be happy and feel safe at school, they need things that interest them. And we knew that if we were putting the pressure on in terms of academic rigor, we also had to create an environment that was welcoming to kids and faculty, but kids in particular. So We added things that they wanted. We put in a Classroom Without Walls program where kids travel internationally 2 times a year. They go all over the world, the Galapagos Islands, Japan, everywhere. And no child is held out of it if they can't afford to go. We ensure that they can go. We put in a sailing program because we had kids in Hoboken that it's a 1 square mile city and they had never seen the waterfront. We expanded sports. We said to the kids, we did surveys. What are the sports that you really would like to see? As a result, we added volleyball and we added lacrosse and things that we knew would get kids excited about coming to school. You know, there were also some behavioral challenges that we were seeing across the board. And some of that, in my opinion, is because they really didn't understand what the purpose of coming to school was. And for me and for my administrative team, we kept honing in on the fact that coming to school is about kind of growing, not only academically, but emotionally and socially. And it's a place to come and feel every day like you have the ability to grow a little bit every day. So we kind of put things in, like we changed the discipline policy. The discipline policy was very, very much associated with you do this wrong, you get 10 days suspension. We want kids to learn, but yet we were holding them out of school for 10 days. So we switched things around. We said, if you make a mistake, first of all, you're forgiven. That's the first thing. The second thing is there will be a consequence, but you're forgiven, but you will be in school while you're being forgiven. And so we started really putting things in, like in-school suspension options. We began holding circles, like Socratic circles with kids that were having some challenges, talking through it. And once they started to realize that we were viewing them as people who were just in the journey of becoming an adult, they started to respond differently. And I think our faculty started approaching kids differently. The philosophy became, how are children doing? If children are doing well, then everything is okay. But if kids are not doing well, then we have a problem with the overall system. So, we started working on things like that. I mean, we had some pretty high profile things happen at the school that really shook the community, or at the high school that shook the community's kind of confidence in the safety of the school. And as a result of that, we really had to take it and take control over that. And we did. And I think we've spoken a little bit about this before. We really have a very low HIB rate. Our harassment, intimidation, and bullying rates are extremely low in the district. Our disciplinary consequences that result in suspensions are rare to virtually none. The kids view school as a place to better themselves emotionally and socially, and the academics are non-negotiable.
Okay. Well, I know your school performance report looks exceptional, right? Because I think there are very few discipline issues.
Yes.
But also, I want to say your chronic absenteeism is non-existent. So, I mean, for those listening today, in New Jersey anyway, chronic absenteeism is missing 10% of school. And I know in New Jersey, according to our kids count data, over 60% of New Jersey schools have a chronic absenteeism problem. And we're
down to about 8.5%, and that's still too high for us.
Therefore, there's no plan required. It means the state recognizes you're doing something
correct,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's, to me, that's a significant
Right, right.
accomplishment in and of itself based on just other data I've seen. So let's take all this together and say, all right, so now we're in, I guess the Stanford work is what, 2022 to 2025?
Correct.
Right. So you started in 2015. We're now 10 years later.
Yeah.
And maybe start with what is that the Stanford University Educational Opportunity Project?
So it is an opportunity for Stanford to capture progress or growth rates, percentages across all school districts in every state, to be able to find outliers of performance for best practice.
Okay.
And as a result of that, they do highlight some districts. We're fortunate. Our neighbors, Union City, has been highlighted in that for their performance. We fall just short of the number of students in grades 3 through 8 to count. So while we show probably we show the highest growth rate in New Jersey in both math and ELA, we don't have enough students to be deemed a
Stanford project?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So
we miss it by about 40 some odd students.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So they take, I guess, data that's common across all schools, right? And as you said, trying to find, I guess, the things that are working. I'm assuming it's with the idea that other schools could copy those practices, right?
Correct.
So what is it what's the data that they're collecting?
So they use the state assessment data.
Okay.
So they're focusing particularly on, for example, right now, the NJSLA, but they included Park, and whatever your state assessment is that is being delivered is the data that they're collecting.
And those are tests that students take every year or at certain years?
Every year. Every year. And so if you look at Hoboken's chart, it's kind of interesting because if you go back 10 years, you will actually see where Hoboken falls versus the state of New Jersey. And what's so wonderful about this project is that you can put in, it's an interactive graph. So you can check and see how do you measure up against districts with like peers.
Okay.
Maybe you would like to, for example, one of the things that I did was I put in all J-factor districts.
J-factor districts are?
So in New Jersey, you run from A to J. They're based, and New Jersey doesn't really use the criteria so much anymore, but it is the socioeconomic breakdown. And so there are very few J-factor districts. There are a lot of districts that are FG-factor districts, not so many A-factor districts, right? So your J-factor districts are your Upper Saddle River, your Mendham Township. Your I-factor districts would be your Livingstons and so on and so forth, Summit, Chatham, Madison, in those areas, right? So we spent days going through this Stanford study to be able to see how we performed from a growth perspective versus every district in the state. And so we ran all kinds of models. We did a Hudson County model because we wanted to see how are we doing against Hudson County districts. We ran a model where we wanted to see how do we stack up against districts that might be considered I and J factor districts. What about where do we stand with FG factor districts, which is where Hoboken actually is? And what we started realizing when we were plugging these in was that we were outperforming in terms of growth every district. There was no district that was even coming very close to us in terms of growth. So then I started to really look at, with my team, when did this happen? Because in 2015-16, Hoboken was here and the state of New Jersey was up here. And so when did we intersect and when did that change? And it was right at COVID time. It really was a testament to everybody in the Hoboken Public School District, because during COVID, we made a critical decision to not close.
Oh.
And so it made a huge difference. And now what you're seeing in those charts is, we are still on a trajectory upward. Some of the other districts during COVID were kind of on a trajectory downward. Now they're bouncing back a little, but we're still growing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So kids were coming to school during COVID.
Yeah.
Or the shutdown, I should say.
Yeah, during the shutdown. So when we were informed in the springtime, at the onset of the springtime, that no one even knew what COVID was, but cities and municipalities were kind of working with their local public school district to let them know what was happening. We immediately realized that this was not good. We were going to have no choice but to be home from the spring until the end of the school year. So we sprung into action right away. I had teams of teachers and my assistant superintendent, because if we knew we were going to go on remote learning, we wanted to make sure that we were prepared for the best remote learning possible. We did not want to hand packets out to children. We wanted it to be instruction during that time. But in order to do that, we had to make sure that we had Chromebooks for everybody. This is where the Hoboken Ed Foundation came in. They ensured that every child had a Chromebook at home. As a district, we purchased jetpacks, Verizon jetpacks. We surveyed every family that did not have internet access received a jetpack. We funded that to ensure that everybody was connected with us at all times. We put a system in where principals and the superintendent communicated with families every single day. There was not a morning that you did not log on your computer, that you did not see the principal or the superintendent, and then later in the day, vice versa. We set up story time. We had teachers that volunteered to do virtual story time online to keep literacy. We had book groups going. We really nailed it when it came to virtual learning. Then the summer hit, and I don't know if you remember, but in June, things looked like they were getting a little better. People were out and about a little bit more. And so we started thinking about, what do we need for the opening of school? So we started purchasing. We received COVID funds, and we made sure that we used our COVID funds for COVID purposes. We purchased masks. We purchased, at the time, everyone thought the desk shields were important. We purchased portable univentilators for every classroom, like tape, so that we can ensure that all the desks were separated enough in terms of social distancing. And we also purchased COVID test kits because we knew we were going to have to test. And then all of a sudden July came and people started talking about the schools closing again. I thought, no, we're ready. We're not closing. We're good. So by August, we brought our unions in. We have 3 unions in Hoboken, a teachers union that also includes administrative assistants, and we have a technicians. They're all in that union. We have an administrators union, and then we have like a support staff union. So we brought everybody together and we said, listen, we're ready to open. We do understand that the rest of New Jersey might not be. What are your thoughts? And so we had Board of Education members around the table, and there was a little trepidation, but we said, look, come with us. We'll do a tour of every school. We're going to give clipboards to everyone with sheets. Anywhere that if there's anything you feel uncomfortable with, let us know. And we promise you we will fix it or address it before we open. So they agreed, and they went from classroom to classroom, gymnasium to gymnasium, cafeteria to cafeteria, and looked at everything from, vents to, we brought a company in to clean all the vents. We were ready to go. And then the end of August came, and it was kind of like, are we really doing this? And we said, yes, we are. And I said, but look, I do not want to be the district that does something like this if I have people that are really uncomfortable. So I took a couple steps back, and my central office team, I said, you know what? Why don't we do this? Let's put a survey out to all families and to all teachers, faculty, and give them the choice. We can operate two different systems. There's no reason we can't do that. So interestingly, somehow it was all the stars were aligned, and we had 60% of families that wanted to send their children back to school. And we had 60% of teachers and paraprofessionals that agreed to come back full-time in person without a truncated day, full day, 5 days a week, no split time, the whole thing. So we took the 40% and the 40%, and we created a system for them for virtual learning, and the 60% came in school. Then what we did was we told everybody every month we will put a survey out, and we will have a reentry point at the end of every month, enabling families, if they choose not to come in September, to hear how it's going. Do they want their children on remote? Do they want them back? So then October came, and we had more come back. Then November came, and more. And by the winter break, and by the time we came back in January, we were up to over 90% back.
Wow.
And so as a result of that, I really think that made a humongous difference, because the kids there was no downtime. And even the children who were on remote learning were on a system and a plan where they weren't just sitting home with a folder of work. They were interacting with their teacher online. They were in a legitimate virtual classroom. But like I said, by January, we brought everyone back. We still ran like sporting events. We still ran clinics. We were so careful. But I think all of those things ensured that the mental health of children was stable. Because interestingly, after COVID, there was a collective lawsuit regarding the well-being of kids associated with social media. We didn't qualify. We tried to get into the class action lawsuit 3 times to say, just in case, like we want to make sure that kids are not using social media inappropriately, but our data would not allow us into any of the class action lawsuits.
Interesting. But again, I think that's a tribute to you and your staff and all the teachers and the parents.
Absolutely.
Because definitely when kids then did come back, there was a lot of anxiety, mental health issues. That's the other kind of data I'm seeing all the time.
Sure.
And people are still trying to recoup from that, right? So the learning loss as a result of all that.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like you all maybe had a little bit of a problem, but continued on your trajectory forward.
Correct. And, we also wanted to make sure that there would not be a problem. So right around that time, we put in a program called Fortitude, where we brought licensed clinicians and mental health workers into every school. So we have a whole team, in addition to having a school-based youth services center in the high school. Now our middle school and our elementary schools have access to licensed clinicians full-time during the day as well.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about now what the results have been. So if you plug your data numbers into the Stanford University Educational Opportunity Project, what has been the growth in learning?
The growth in learning has been pretty amazing. We are now up to, I think, 70% of our students, or 71% of our students, are proficient in language arts literacy.
And that's from 39% or 31%,
yeah, from 39%,
right?
Wow. Yeah. And we are over 60% in math, which is up from 31%, low 30s. So we're seeing like a relatively high growth rate in our performance. And in addition to that, we don't just look at the standardized test scores from the state of New Jersey. I mean, it's great that that's what they're capturing, but we benchmark local assessments. Like, we create writing benchmarks that we capture, so we see and we trace whether we're seeing growth in that area. We capture DRA data, which is the diagnostic reading assessment data. We capture that. We are now also going to be capturing DIBELS data, and DIBELS is another reading assessment. They take a very short period of time to do with kids, and you get a really good understanding of which children need more assistance in the area of reading. We capture math fluency data. We have math fluency assessments that kids do, and we capture that data because we know that in order for kids to get better in the area of math, they have to be able to add, they have to be able to subtract, and they have to do it quickly. So as a result, we capture that data.
So is all the testing that you're talking about, because it seems like a lot, but maybe it's not a lot, how is that captured that it doesn't become like the total focus of the class?
That's a really good question, and it doesn't feel that way at all. Math fluency takes literally 5 minutes, if that. You get a timer and go, and the kids go. And one of the things that's really powerful about math fluency is that children that typically struggle in mathematics can do very well in the area of math fluency. And it builds confidence, and they're watching my math fluency assessment 1 week, the next week it's higher, then the next week it's higher. Now all of a sudden I can do this with my eyes closed. I know how to do this. And so that's very helpful. The writing benchmarks that we do, that's just student work that kids are producing. They're not feeling it as an assessment. We're just capturing the data. We do what are called vertical slice protocols, meaning that we evaluate student work all the time. So they're not necessarily sitting as if they're taking a test. We're just capturing the data once it's scored.
Okay.
It's almost as if it's an assignment.
Okay. Because, I mean, I hear that people get very concerned.
Yeah.
There's so much pressure, just more anxiety. Maybe the child chokes and doesn't do well. So what you're saying is just like a continuous look at that.
Yeah.
What about some other things? I know early on you said really there were no AP students, right?
Yeah.
So do you have AP students now?
Yeah. So we have, this year we administered, we have a high school of 713 students. We administered 856 AP exams this year.
Wow.
We have risen from 0 AP scholars to over 163 scholars in 2024-25 as a result of their hard work. We went from 22% scoring 3s or higher in 2015-16. We are now at 85% scoring 3 or higher on the AP exams.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, to me, that's terrific for the teachers, but it's also terrific for the kids.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
They go, oh, I could do this.
And they also have the ability, in depending on the schools that they're applying to potentially have college credits covered as a result of those AP tests.
Speaking of college, any change in your SAT scores?
Yes. SAT scores have gone up. Not only our SATs, but our PSAT scores have gone up. One of the things we did when I first came was we ensured that every child takes the PSATs from ninth grade on every year. So we cover the cost of the PSATs. One of the things we were noticing was that when they were taking the SATs as juniors, and sometimes in the fall of only their senior year, they had never seen the test before. And we also weren't capturing any potential merit scholars. So now kids come to Hoboken High School in ninth grade, they take the PSATs. In 10th grade, they take the PSATs. And then in 11th, they take it as well.
Right. And that relieves anxiety, right?
Exactly.
For kids choking.
Yeah.
So overall, there's a lot of different things. Were there any other structural things or strategies or protocols that we haven't talked about that got implemented over this time that you think may have also contributed to the success you're seeing today?
I actually think the district strategic plan was very powerful. So we had a strategic plan that had a vision and a mission and some goals. When I first got into the district, we created this plan. The second iteration of that plan became more sophisticated, meaning that the goals were not just words. They became metrics for what we were looking to assess and what we needed to do better or what we knew we were doing really well. Now we're on the third iteration of the strategic plan, and it has become even more sophisticated from the perspective that if you open our strategic plan, you will see that it's a 4-year plan, and there's a 4-year action plan that tells us what the goals are, what the objectives are, and what the metrics are for every objective. Our entire administrative team, all of their merit goals are based on the metrics of the system. The teachers are aware of what those goals and metrics are. Everybody knows what the vision and the mission statement is of the school district. And there's a portrait of a graduate that clearly outlines what it is that we hope for when children graduate from our system. And what I mean by that is there are very clear activities that are embedded in every curriculum that outline the characteristics in the portrait of a graduate. So like I can sit and talk to a student and say, you're graduating. Tell me how you feel about being a creative innovator. How has the school district helped you become a creative innovator? Because that's an attribute in our portrait of a graduate. And the student will be able to tell me every activity that they participated in that helped contribute to that. Being a globally and culturally responsive citizen. What does that actually mean? And what did you do throughout your years in the Hoboken school system that helped you now graduate from the district knowing that that's what that you actually possess attributes that contribute to that particular area? And they'll be able to tell you that. That's the reason why all of our programs, all of our curriculum is attached to that strategic plan. And when I said earlier, all the arrows are pointing in the same direction, although it may seem like a lot of things were done, there's really only 5 or 6 things that we did that made all of this happen. One, we trained teachers well, right? We trained them in strategies for literacy. We also trained them in instructional effectiveness. That's all we train in. We don't have 50 workshops that people are going out to all the time. We train in 2 areas, and that is how to be the best practitioner in the classroom and also how to teach kids to read.
Okay.
Those are two areas. So teacher training was one thing. Putting innovative programs in wasn't another thing that we did. Creating a strategic plan that really guides everything that we do, we did that. Making sure that we had supports in place for kids at all times. Guidance counselors, Right? One of the statistics shows that, right, there's high schools in particular, like guidance counselors are servicing 400 plus kids in schools. That's impossible, right? So what did we do? Yes, we spent the money, and yes, maybe from a taxpayer perspective, it's hard to live with, but we have guidance counselors dedicated to every grade level, particularly at the high school, because if we only had 2 guidance counselors or we only had 3, now we have 4 guidance counselors and we have a director of guidance. It is such a critical area for kids. And we have our school-based youth services and the mental health services for kids. All of those things really helped round out why I think we got to where we got. And the last thing is that we systematized our approach. And this is where I see it doesn't happen in a lot of places. You can go into every single school and every single classroom will feel different. We want teachers to have their own personality. We want them to do creative things. And it's okay if the kids are sewing a map of the United States in order to learn something, and in another classroom, they're baking a cake. The goal, though, is to be creative, but the basis of it is that it's the same objective. And that has ensured consistency across the district. So we will scaffold those objectives. We will make those objectives creative in a lot of different ways, but the non-negotiable is the objective. And that's one of the most difficult things, I think. Like, we've had districts come to visit us regarding literacy. And the one thing we hear frequently is, isn't there a lot of resistance? How do you get everybody to do that? And for us, it's just part of the district culture now, is that everybody understands that we have to be rowing in the same direction. You know, our boats can look a little different, but we have to be rowing in the same direction. And so that's kind of what we did. And we have a relentless effort when it comes to kids who are struggling.
So if you were making suggestions or recommendations for other school districts, and you mentioned this, you need to be rowing in the same direction, would you suggest that they focus on that literacy piece?
Yeah,
first?
I would suggest they focus on the literacy piece and also ensuring that curriculum is being implemented the same way in every school and in across the grade levels. So how do you make sure that happens? Your principals in the schools have to ensure that they're actually working with teachers on lesson planning and making sure that the lessons are identical. I will not walk into a 3rd grade classroom, for example, and see a math lesson and walk into another 3rd grade lesson and see that class in a totally different unit of study. It will not happen, because once that starts to happen, achievement gets skewed. Because some kids are getting through an entire year not finishing what the curriculum is, and then they go to the next year and they're mixed then with kids from other sections that some finished and some didn't finish. We ensure that every single child starts their curriculum and ends their curriculum.
And my sense is you're providing the supports to the teachers to enable them to do that.
100%.
Which is another piece of this. Interesting. And I guess the last thing I would say, it sounds like the school climate, or whatever you want to call it, but the social emotional learning of kids, that is also a critical piece of all this.
Yeah, right? It really is. They have to want to come to school. You know, we talk about attendance and we talk about, you know, even effort being at school. Kids have to feel like adults believe they can do it. Mm-hmm. And they have to feel that the adults enjoy them and enjoy having them there every day. In Hoboken, our adults across the board feel that way about kids. They really do. And so as a result, I think that if you do have an anomaly where you have a child who's struggling with attendance or a family who's struggling with attendance, part of our overall culture is not to get on the phone right away and say to the truancy court, here we come. Our first step is to visit the family. The second step is to have the family in. The third step is to repeat having the family in and saying, what else can we do to help? It is not until we get to a point where it's really having an impact on a child that the accountability comes into it is happening all along before we get to a point where we have to take a family to truancy court. And that will happen once in a while. It will, but
Sure.
It's definitely becoming less of a task in the district.
No, I'm sure these things do, right? And there can be all kinds of reasons for it, but it just sounds as if there's a whole, as you call it, the culture of the district. It's making a difference. People are buying into it because they see it working.
Yeah.
And I really thank you for sharing all this. And I guess I'm looking forward to seeing the movie.
We have a lot of work left to do. We definitely do. And like I said earlier, now we're into really looking at the 30% of kids who are not yet achieving. Once we get there, then we'll feel like our work is done, but we're not there yet.
Well, thank you for all you do. Thank you to your staff, especially.
Yes.
And all the students and the parents, right, who help contribute to this. Any final thoughts that you want to say, or do you think we've covered most of it?
I think we've covered everything. I think if all educators just understood that the secret sauce is believing that kids can be successful in some way, shape, or form, whether it be in small increments of growth or in, large increments of academic achievement in one fell swoop. If we just believe that kids can do it, they will rise to the occasion. And you create a culture of celebration and celebration when there are successes. That's really what makes districts
I totally
get
agree
to
with
where
you.
they need to go.
Well, Dr. Johnson, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for joining us. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I'm so glad we met.
Thank you. Me as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for watching. Visit the description to find out more information about today's conversation. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the bell if you enjoyed the video and want to be updated when our newest interviews are released.